Hey guys, welcome to another episode. And in this episode, we're going to talk about AA. AA stands for Approach Anxiety, and we're going to talk about two of the approaches you can use and to overcome AA. Secondly, we're going to talk about how to be your best orbiter. For those of you who don't know what an orbiter is, that's when you are orbiting around a girl, hoping that you will get her at some point in the future. Generally speaking, this is not advised. And thirdly, we're going to talk about a very lewd question that we got about whether Japanese or Korean girls, who's better at sucking cock? Not my words. I'm reading from the question as sent in to me. So, that's what's here for today's episode.
This is 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, and 100% reason to remember the name.
I'm RedpoleQ, and with me is
Mr. Right.
who I have known for a very long time, 8 years now.
Yeah,
right?
it's been a while.
Yeah, so he's a longtime friend and now a current roommate at. Actually, we don't have a new place for the new. We don't have a name for the new crib yet.
Kitty spa.
Kitty spa. Oh, right. Okay. We might confuse some of our listeners. They might actually think that we're at Kitty spa.
Well, it's not a bad image to have.
For those of you who don't know, Kitty Spa is a very special establishment in Bangkok.
Thailand.
Our other roommate, McConnell, who you've heard from in previous episodes, may be at the original Kitty Spa right now. Maybe we should call this place Kitty Spa 2.
Kittier spa.
Kittier Spa. Okay. So anyway, let's get into the questions. So let's maybe we won't go in order. Maybe we'll save the serious stuff for the end.
that could be a better strategy.
So let's start with the orbiter question. Okay, so here we go. Here's the question. Well, there's two questions. So my two questions. This is from Delfare85. So my questions are more for girls met via social circles, friends of friends, people you work with, then pick up on the street, in clubs, at coffee shops, etc. Then so he means better than cold, not social circle rather than cold approach. And he says, let's imagine that I'm interested in a girl in my friend group, and she already has a boyfriend. I don't want to try to break up the couple. And I don't want to create any kind of drama in the friend group. So I'm going to try with other girls. But I would like to be in a good position to seduce her if she breaks up with her boyfriend. So I don't want to be friend zoned because I've spent a lot of time orbiting her. How to handle the breakup? Should I talk to her when she's sad and get closer? Should I avoid the subject? Should I try to seduce her directly, or should I wait? I'm not currently in this situation, but I already had this happen to me in the past, and I always got friend zoned. So I'm interested to know what to do if it happens again. So first of all, let's talk about what an orbiter is. You want to talk about
so
what
an
is?
orbiter basically is a guy who, I suppose it could be a girl as well, but anyways, it's a guy.
Generally a fat girl.
Yeah.
Or a fat, ugly girl.
Or around the rich guy, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's true. There are girls that are, but they're not really. I guess they
high value guy.
I guess they kind of are orbiters, but generally instead I think those rich guys would call them fuck buddies.
Much better term.
They're applying for wife status.
There's a good term. Add that to the lexicon. So an orbiter basically is a guy who just basically he hangs around in the outskirts of the girl's territory, and she may be unavailable for whatever reason, and he's just kind of hanging around until she's available. Then he tries to make his move and get in there.
But I think one of the important keys about the Orbiter is that the way he interacts with her is such that she isn't aware that he's actually interested in her.
Yes. So it's not like a stalker, but so he's basically a stalker that she doesn't view as a stalker. There you go.
The gentle stalker.
Yes.
So that's basically what an Orbiter is. Now, so essentially, when you have girls that are in your social circle, and you're sort of waiting for them to be available for whatever reason, because they have boyfriends, or because they're in another country, or you're in another country,
or they're psychos,
or you don't know how to make a move, which is the more common situation.
Yes.
Then you're they're an Orbiter, and when you're the Orbiter, there is a very high probability that you get friend zoned. Now, let's talk about the friend zone, because in Asia the friend zone is very different from the friend zone in in the West, in America, in Canada. So, the friend zone, if you don't know what it is, it means that a girl sees you as a friend, meaning that she doesn't see you as a sexual entity.
Mm-hmm.
You're a guy, maybe a very nice guy, but you're a great guy for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you've been friend zoned.
Yes.
When
exactly.
she's asking you, why don't you have a girlfriend? You're such a great guy. So many girls would be lucky to be with you. Oh, did you ever hear this? I
haven't heard this. Is this a story about someone?
No, I was just wondering if you've ever had girls say this to you.
Not since coming to Asia.
Okay, but you did have it in
I did have
America.
it in America.
Yeah,
yes.
right.
Or they may say something like, "Oh wow, I'm so horny. I want to fuck every guy here. Oh, except you, of course."
Yeah. I really like you. You're really nice.
You're just such a dependable guy. Not like my boyfriend. He just fucks me and leaves.
So in Asia, this is not a major problem, right? So in Asia, generally speaking, the way it works is that you meet girls through, well, as a Westerner, when you move to Asia, you're outside of all the social structures, right? So you usually, for most of us, you came there to work. So if you came there to work, then you can't meet girls through school because you're not in school. You can't meet girls through other friends because you don't have any other friends, and you can't meet girls through work because if you're an English teacher, then you work with a bunch of other dudes.
Mm.
Now, if you have a like a banker job or something, now then you have the possibility. But most banker guys don't want to date banker chicks. So, although we do have one guy, Prime, he works at a pretty big firm, so there are plenty of girls there. And wait, we'll get to that later when we talk about not working girls. When we talk about girls you work with.
Yeah. Yes. Very different subjects.
Yeah. So, so generally speaking, most foreigners in Asia have to do cold approach. They just don't have any other options.
Yeah.
And I guess there are things that are kind of similar to social circle, like language exchange.
Oh, you could do language exchange. You could
international parties.
International parties. That was the big thing back in the day.
It's not anymore?
I guess it's still kind of big, but
it's the big thing for guys who just arrived in Asia.
Yeah.
It's what it is.
It was much. I guess it depends on the city. So in Osaka, where I lived, it was much different a couple of years ago. Yeah, even just a few years ago, it was much different.
See, I don't know about that. People always say that. Every time people always say, it's sort of like that thing where people go, oh yeah, when I was your age, people were so much more diligent about their studies or whatever, and it's all bullshit. I feel that way about this sort of thing. people always say, "Oh, the clubs used to be so much better. Oh, the parties used to be so much better." I don't know if this is true. I tend to think that it's more me that's changed, and that environment has probably stayed about the same.
While that's possible, I would disagree in this case, just because when I went to the international parties years ago, it was a certain crowd who was there, and you would get sort of this influx of different people from week to week. And when I went to it again recently, it was more just the same people who always went and no new people. So it seems like the new people had just either moved on to other events or other things, or just aren't doing those types of parties anymore. I'm not really sure what the reason was that happened, but it just seemed that the people who were at the party were just the ones who had always gone.
Well, maybe that's a marketing problem.
Yeah, it could be.
And there's other international parties.
That could be, but
because when I first got to Osaka, that wasn't they didn't have that one, the What's Up parties. Most of them we had these ones. It was great. So when you're a foreigner living in Japan, you're kind of always broke, and so they had this one that foreigners were free, and they gave you free food.
The good old days.
Yeah, but with the Japanese economy, they can't do things like that.
Can't do things like that anymore. Too many foreigners too.
Okay, so let's get back to the question. So
how to be your best orbiter?
So first of all, you don't want to be an orbiter. That's bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely bad. So you have now. First of all, here's the biggest problem that I see here. Is you're saying you don't want to create problems in your social circle. But basically you're waiting for this girl to break up with her boyfriend. And then you're going to swoop in, and then you're going to try and start banging this girl who used to be banging your friend. It's going to be pretty difficult for that not to cause some kind of problems in the social circle.
It will definitely change the dynamic, at the very least, within the group.
Now, it's true that you can't be accused of being a homewrecker under these circumstances, but I don't really see how that is really good for your social network if that's what you're trying to do. I mean, if you're the guy that's always banging everybody's exes.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the group. Like certain groups, I suppose that could be kind of acceptable, but I don't think those groups, the guys would really be worrying about disrupting the harmony of the social circle.
Yeah,
just
that's right.
They would just do it, and then fuck all if people are upset.
Yeah. I guess you've had some experience with these kind of.
I've seen them for sure.
Okay, yeah. So I once went with a girl to this event, and Don's friend was trying to pick up my girl, really blatantly. It was so weird. Anyway. So, there's those kind of guys, and they just don't care in the first place.
Yeah, so I mean, I think if you're going to do that, then you should be prepared for some level of drama within the group.
Yeah.
It will definitely affect the social group in some way. And you should, it's helpful to be prepared for that. Maybe this girl, the girl is really great and she's a real catch, so she might be worth it, but you have to really ask yourself if that's worth it, and just keep that in mind from the beginning.
Right. So that's the very first point. The first point is you have to just not care. I mean, if you're planning on banging girls that other dudes that are ostensibly your friends or did have a relationship with previously, and you're planning on taking this girl around to the events, that's going to create some friction for sure.
I wouldn't say you shouldn't care so much as you should be aware of what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah. So now, assuming that you don't mind that, and you want to know how to get yourself to be in a good position so that you're holding the catcher's mitt, so that when she's available, you can immediately scoop her up. Hopefully, you send her to the shower first. Unless that's what you're into. I don't know. Maybe you like it extra dirty. I like my women with extra sauce. Anyway, so
extra virgin olive oil.
So if you're into this girl, then you need to position yourself in a way where where you're not actually that great friends with her. Mm-hmm. If you're really good friends with her, then she will have a lot of weird feelings about dating you.
Now, what do you mean when you say really good friends?
I mean I mean that your interactions with her need to be sexually charged.
So there needs to be a chemistry between you two.
I hate that word. No, there doesn't have to be chemistry. It has to be pretty clear, even when you're friends with her, that you would have sex with her, but you're just not trying to at the moment. Mm-hmm. Presumably you're not trying to at the moment. Mm-hmm. Well, you said in your question that you weren't trying to in the moment. So, but she needs to know that you are thinking about it all the time. Mm-hmm. And that you don't want to just be friends with her.
And it would probably be very helpful if you do appear to be the type of guy who's good with girls around the fur. I mean, I suppose it depends on the kind of girl that she is. Like, if she thinks you're just a man whore and she's not into that, that could be
Generally speaking, being the man whore is not great. But if she so I think, and so this is the other reason why you can't be such good friends with her, because you definitely need to, and I kind of hate to say this, but you need to keep your distance. You need to keep some level of distance from her. So if she knows you really well, then she is unlikely to select you next, mm-hmm. right? Because you're there. She can get you anytime. So there's not much interest there. There's not a lot of, reason for her to go and date you after, she's broken up with your friend. So there needs to be some distance so that if she decides to let's say she wants to sleep with you casually, well, because there's that distance, she can do that and feel that it's pretty safe. I would say on the other thing is that if, let's say she's dating him for a year, if she knows all the girls that you've been banging and, who you've been dating and all this stuff, that creates a lot of uncomfortable emotions for her. So if you're not such good friends with her, so she doesn't actually know about your dating life and she only hears, vague notions, and she can just make guesses that maybe there's someone, but, you always say, well, it's really, I've gone on some dates, but, nothing I'm really into, mm-hmm. then that can work. But I mean, if you're bringing these other girls out and she's meeting them and you're hanging out, her boyfriend, you, and, girl number 4 of this year. I mean, that's not, she's not going to break up with her boyfriend and go, yeah.
That's a guy that I definitely want to
be with.
Definitely will stick around for me.
Yeah. So I would say you have to keep some, a pretty good amount of distance between you and her to, make that successful, to make it successful, that you're in the best position. And also by keeping that distance, you're not going to be friend zoned.
Now, I've also heard other things that attraction can also be a factor of, the more time you spend with someone, the more attracted you become to them. What would you say, does that factor into this?
So I read a study about this. I didn't read the study. I read about a study that and they basically say that that's true up until a point, and then it reverses. Mm-hmm. So, as with most things, if anyone is giving you real advice about dating and relationships and dealing with people, there's no hard and fast rules.
Yeah.
And this is one of those where you should know that you should need to spend time with her, but if you spend too much time with her, then you start to lose your seductive powers.
Yeah.
So, you need to spend enough time with her that she knows about you and she likes you, but she needs to still have curiosity. So, like I said, if it's always you and all, I mean, and like, okay, so here's an example. Let's say that they're in your friend group, but your friend group primarily just, when you're with that friend group, usually you guys just go to karaoke or KTV or Norebang, whichever country you're in. That's, it's one of those. If that's the case, or let's say you guys just go out to the club and go drinking together at the club, that's fine because there's not really a lot of intimacy created in that kind of environment. So there would still be a good deal of mystery there. So, or distance there. I don't really like to use the word mystery unless I'm talking about mystery, in which case. So in that case, I think it works. But if, you and her, and her boyfriend and who's your friend and, are all going out to brunches every Sunday, that is not good.
Yeah. Definitely don't be in a situation where you're one of her girlfriends.
Yeah, exactly. You don't. Yeah, and if she's coming to you with her boyfriend problems and trying to get you to smooth things over with him or asking you advice, I mean, that's bad. That's really bad.
Don't be her psychologist either.
Yeah, I mean, if she comes to you for advice, then you need to be the one who's just like, oh, why don't you just come over and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, and like you've given me this advice, and I've heard you give it to others as well. And basically, it's really hard for a girl to friend zone you if you're always trying to have sex with her.
Yeah, that's right.
So, I mean,
generally speaking, they by always trying to have sex with you, maintain that sexual tension.
Mm-hmm.
So, even when girls try to friend zone you, basically they have to just be enjoying that sexual tension and not have sex with you, or they just stop meeting you because they just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly.
And, so that's kind of the ideal outcome. Because the other outcome is that she likes you and she just hangs out with you all the time, and then she'll just never, ever have sex with you, but then you're just sitting there wanting to have sex with her, which is, really bad.
But, again, within the social circle, I mean, that can potentially disrupt the harmony or kind of make things awkward if you're always trying to have sex with this girl who's also in your group. And, people will talk and say, oh, wow, he's trying to have sex with her again, but she's, like, not interested. Like, you just have to be aware that, if you're trying to do this with a girl who's in your social group and it doesn't work out, it may lead to problems.
Like, and this is why you want to have some distance. I mean, I think that in your social group, and this is actually not only, as another example, if you go to clubs really regularly, there's a lot of, probably any given time. I mean, it varies from city to city, but if you go to clubs a lot, then there's going to be a pretty high percentage of people that there whenever you go, like regulars. You may not know them, you may not have spent a lot of time with them, but you recognize their faces, they recognize your face, you probably greet them when you show up. And I would say that even in major cities, if you go out enough over an extended period, if you go out every weekend for, let's say, a year, then probably if you go to, the same 3, 4, 5 places, then you probably will know somewhere in the neighborhood of 10% of the people that go there. And like I said, it doesn't mean you know them, like you've talked to them, but it means you've seen them before, or that they're friends of someone or something along those lines, So if that's the case, then there's enough distance, because they're kind of a social circle in a way, but there's so much distance between you because you never spent much time with them, that word like that doesn't really get around that much, and then it can be okay. But you should be aware that it can be damaging to your reputation. That's always a possibility, and we'll talk more about that when we get to the part about girls that you work with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How to handle when other guys... Okay, so wait, do we want to... Yeah, let's talk about... Let's do this next question from the part 2 of this question, and then we'll talk about maybe some specific other situations. How to handle when other guys are interested in the same girl as me, especially if these guys know her for a longer time, have close relationship with her, and I just met her recently. So, actually, this is the best possible situation, right? Because all the other guys, she knows them already, and she's already hung out with them, and then you're the new guy. I mean, this is even in the States, this is like a stereotype, right? The new guy comes to the high school at 2 years in, and she's already sussed out all the existing guys already, and you're the new guy who's all interesting because you're different from everybody else who's already there. I mean, this is like Karate Kid right there.
Oh yeah. Well, classic kind of new guy comes in and kind of steals the girl, or he
Back to the Future.
Some nerd comes in, reinvents himself, and he's the star of the school because.
Sure.
I mean, basically he just makes a really good first impression, and then that's just the impression people have of him for the rest of the time they know him.
Yeah, so in this case, maybe the other people know you, but she doesn't know you, so, that's great. You can, as Mr. Wright just said, you can create an image of, for her, you can create a fresh image, and if that image conflicts with the image she's heard, all the better, because now you have lots of depth. You're so deep. And so, once again, you have that distance built into your situation, and that distance is that, you've just met her recently, but everybody else is people she already knows, and people she's already decided, nope, don't want to date him, nope, don't want to date him, don't want to date him. And also, once again, because if you're new, then you're sort of outside of the social circle to some extent, and that means that she can, sneak off and do all sorts of dirty things with you and not feel the same concern about how that's going to affect the other social dynamics in her life.
Yes. So keep in mind, in relating to the previous question, the girl is also thinking about how this will affect her reputation within the group, and you have to really think of it from her point of view. If she goes around and just dates every single guy that's in her group, or even just has the image, like people say that, oh, she just dated Tommy, but now she's dating Jake. Like, like what kind of image does that generate for her? Not a very good one. And
right.
So that's something she may also be thinking about.
Unless Jake and Tommy are, like I know about this Japanese girl who she was dating a guy who was what was this guy doing? I think he was a photographer. And so she got to go to these parties that he was a photographer for or something. And then she met a movie producer. So then she was like hanging out with this movie producer guy and going to all these parties, and then she ended up marrying this F1 race car driver. So in that case, where it's a strategic move on her part and she keeps moving up in the status of guys she's dating, okay, right, there's that. But if she's just sort of the pass-around pack.
That's not really an image you want to have,
right,
as anyone, really.
So being the outside guy is a big advantage, actually. So yeah, I mean, once again, you need to maintain a certain amount of distance with these girls if you want to get them. So let's talk about specifically in the maybe before we talk about the work situation, part of this question is, how do you deal with these other guys who presumably are going to be trying to cockblock you? For those of you who don't know this technical term, cockblock, it means that these other guys are going to try and keep you away from what they see as being their territory.
Well, not always a guy.
Oh yeah, that's right. It could be girls as well, for sure.
Could be animals. Could be physical objects.
Yeah,
there
definitely.
Are cockblocks everywhere.
Definitely, girls with dogs. They create problems. That you go on a date, they bring their dog. One time I was in Korea and I met this girl who I hadn't seen in a long time, and we used to date. She shows up, and we go and have kind of a date, and I'm like, okay, I bring her back to she's parked her car at the hotel, so I'm like, oh, perfect. So we go back to the hotel, and I'm thinking, okay, now it's gonna happen. And then she's like, oh, I really need to take my kittens back home. And I'm like, what? She had these kittens in her car. She'd be sitting in her fucking car.
The kitten block. You never see him coming.
So there you go. It can be anyway. So the cock block. So yeah. So the deeper you are in the social circle, the easier it is for people to cock block you, because you're constrained by the need to maintain good relationships. So I was in Japan one time. Oh, this was the worst. And I used to go to clubs a lot when I lived there, and I had so I knew most of the DJs and MCs, and I was friendly with them. And so I was chatting up this girl, and one of the DJ guys comes over to me, and of course I want to be friends with him because in the club, he gets you in for free, or at least for cheap. He sometimes gets you free drinks. That's if you know him, people think, oh, you must be somebody to know the guy who was just up in front of everybody performing, right?
And he, hopefully he invited lots of girls there that
right.
he can introduce you to, or you can introduce yourself to through
Sure.
knowledge of him.
So anyway, so I'm talking to this girl, and he comes over and he's like, "Oh, you know Martin? Oh man, he gets so many girls. He gets all the girls." And I'm like, "Oh God." And I was thinking, well, I would probably if I was a DJ like you. But anyway, but that's one example. I had another example of a friend who he was he was a bouncer at the clubs, and so he had this pretty deep social circle because he used to hang out with the Japanese guys. One of the guys had like a bar, and he would like go and hang out there, and so we knew like all these girls who hung out at the clubs all the time, and he so he whenever he brought if he brought a girl into the group, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, he's Big J. He's Big J. Big J is so cool. Like, oh, he's really great. We really like Big J. He's like awesome." But if he like tried to go for any girls in the social circle, they'd be like, "Why you been hanging out with Big J so much?" And so he could never get any girls out of that social circle.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
It's like the reputation without any of the benefits.
Exactly. So you got to keep this in mind. This is why it's good to keep some level of distance, because the bigger the distance is, the less she can go on what these guys are saying. But if you're always hanging out with them and all your pictures are with them, and then, they say something about you, she's going to believe it. But if you never are hanging out with them and she just knows that you know them, then, you're in a much better position to be able to control the image. So keep that in mind. So let's talk about dealing with coworkers, because we recently there's a few guys that recently are in this situation where they're trying to get their coworkers. So with guys who are trying to get their coworkers, we've had one guy who he had a girl who worked for him.
Yeah, his employee.
His
intern, actually.
Yeah, that's right, his intern. And
there's absolutely no problems that could possibly arise from that.
Right. I mean, one of the funny things is, of course, anytime you're in this situation, there's that, what is that called? In Japanese, there's a pawahara. Is that what it's called?
Oh, yeah. So it's like the sexual harassment, or like the she could argue like she has that pressure from the guy who's in like a position of power, position to manipulate her in some way, which could be true.
Right. I mean, but it's ironic, right? Because, of course, this is basically the exact situation where, because girls want to be with guys that are powerful.
Yeah.
And then if you use that power to get girls, it's like, Anyway, but the point is that they have this thing.
She has to want you to use that power together.
That's right. It's called power harassment. And, pretty much the way it works is that how a girl feels about you after, let's say you have sex with her. How she feels about you after you have sex with her is the determining factor as to whether it was an okay or whether you're in big trouble, mister. So that's the main thing you have to consider. The other thing is that now, this is even worse in a lot of cases, unless you work for like a huge company. This is a lot worse than, a friend circle. Because in a friend circle, you could just decide not to go when that person is there. But here, you have to go to work, and you have to see that person all the time.
Yeah.
And that may set you into some kind of wild rage if things don't go well with her.
Well, especially if you wanted it to keep going, and then it didn't. And also, if you're her boss, then that's a whole can of worms that is not good.
Absolutely. Or another example is that we had another one of the guys, and he was dating a girl who's not, she doesn't work for him, but they work in the same company, and he's much higher ranked. And so because he's much higher ranked, she feels uncomfortable about sleeping with him. So she told him this. And, he had titty in the mouth as well. So it wasn't like, he got pretty far, but was still unable to close. And then now it's like, she has this weird thing where she has decided that it's not a good idea to have sex with him, but she still likes him actually. And so she flirts with him, but she doesn't meet him, but they have to meet each other because they work together. I mean, it's just...
Yeah.
It's just very complicated. And, I think you should consider that if you do cold approach, then you don't have any of these
You don't
problems.
have any of these. Well, you have other problems, but you don't have these problems.
Yeah, I'm not saying that cold approach will eliminate your problems.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that with cold approach, you can use kind of a slash and burn approach scorched earth. That's the one I'm looking for.
Scorched earth.
You can have a scorched earth policy in cold approach, and it's totally fine because in the aftermath, you just never see those people again.
Yeah, could work out. I mean, and there's other there's not exactly cold approach, there's warm approach, where you don't necessarily know the person or the people there, but maybe you were invited by a friend, or maybe it's your friend's event, or maybe it's some other kind of like mixer or some other event where where approaching is expected and encouraged. And you can also
Internations.
Yeah, exactly. like speed dating type.
Let's just say
things.
Internations is not exactly the fountain of youth.
Well,
but if you really are interested in sophisticated, career-oriented women who are making moves, Internations is your place.
That's your place. Hey, some guys are still going there.
Yeah,
They're still getting results. So,
or if that's not really what you're into, but you like the idea of being a house husband or a kept man, Internations can work for you.
Yeah. So I mean that, but yeah. So besides, if you're opposed, I guess for whatever reason of approaching strangers on the street, you could just go
or
to
in clubs or bars or cafes or malls.
Yeah.
Or bookstores.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so basically, if you're opposed to talking to anyone outside of an environment where you're expected to talk to them, there are environments where you're expected to talk to people, and you could just go to a lot of these. I know, especially in the West, if you live in like a large metropolitan area, you could find some kind of event almost every day to go to and meet people. It may not be the kinds of people the kinds of girls you want to have a relationship with or have sex with, or talk to or look at, but I mean that they will be new experiences and it will be a much more comfortable environment for you. So man, you can keep in mind that that's also available. But I think like the underlying message we want to send towards trying to orbit a girl in your social group or date a coworker or date an underling. It's basically there are so many girls in the world that like literally half of this earth is populated by women.
Now, granted, you may not be interested in all of that half.
Yeah.
In fact, you're probably interested in a very small fraction of that half, depending on who you are.
And you live in an area that has access to a fraction of that number. But if you live in any kind of large metropolitan area, or even like a medium-sized city, you can meet lots of new women every day. And if you don't live in a large metropolitan area or city, you should move.
It's funny. I was just a couple weeks ago, I read this article about a guy who was working at some research laboratory station in
Antarctica. Yeah, he I heard the story.
Right.
Yeah.
He met a girl off Tinder.
Yeah.
Who also was in
match.
Antarctica. So, there you go. I mean, even that guy was able to reach out and get some action. So you have no excuses because you're not in Antarctica. So, there are lots of options out there that don't involve you, destroying your friend's circle or, banging your buddy's girlfriend behind his back or
dealing with a sexual harassment suit.
But, once again, I'm not... Oh, and then we have another guy, and he also, there's this one girl... this is so common, right? Because there's 2 girls or 3 girls or 4 girls in the social circle, and you're sort of flirting with all of them, and then they all get upset that you're flirting with the other ones. Then you get none of them. That also happens. We have a guy that just happened to him very recently. Actually, I think that's happened to him on a few occasions. So it's complicated, and I'm not saying you can't do it, but you should be aware that route is fraught with dangers. And that, the yield may not be all that much better than cold approach. It may be easy because you have to interact with them anyway, or you're going to interact with them anyway. But on the other hand, the potential aftertaste,
the fallout.
There we go. Can be very much not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, just keep in mind, like, there are definitely problems with cold approach or warm approach or even online dating, especially online dating. But I mean, those have drastically lower long-term consequences than fucking up your social group or your job. It's probably the worst. And you're trading the drama you don't have to deal with in that situation for trying to build up kind of a strong social character or a strong inner spirit that allows you to just keep getting rejected by dozens of women, which is quite useful in its own right in other areas of your life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great, awesome. So let's move on. I think maybe we'll actually not get to everything that we wanted to get to. So let's move on to the next crazy question that we got. All right, this is from SMenon46. Here's the first question. I understand Japanese and Koreans are well versed in 69 and blowjobs. Which girl is better? Do Japanese girls have a more sexy and aggressive sexual appetite, and do they suck cock better than Korean girls? SMenon46.
That's a quality question there. He's just cut into the root of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say though, this is not as uncommon of a question as you'd think.
Mm-hmm.
But normally people keep the question a lot shorter. Usually it's something like, want Korean girl suck cock, where find?
Well, they're stretching the limits of their English ability there. Yeah. So
no, it's understandable. I'm just saying, such not accustomed to getting such eloquently phrased questions that are only about getting blowjobs.
Maybe he's been taking a couple months of English classes to work up that sequence.
All right, so let's broaden this question and just talk about the difference between Korean and Japanese, the sexual cultures of those two different countries in general.
Mm-hmm. And they're quite different.
They are. There's a lot of
there's overlap. Of course, there's overlap.
We'll see. We'll let the sparks fly. But first of all, let's first answer the question.
Who's better at sex?
Do Japanese girls have more sexy and aggressive sexual appetite, and do they suck cock better than Korean girls? What does Mr. Wright say?
Oh, so I've only had very, very cursory experience with Korean girls in terms of sex, but I can say that they all have been very much more enthusiastic about the endeavor than some Japanese girls that I've dated. Now, I can't say I have dated many more Japanese girls than I have Koreans, so it could just be that a factor of the numbers has played to stilt my kind of view, but I would say like Korean girls have given me some of the best sex I've ever had. Okay,
what about blowjobs specifically? He wants to know about sucking cock.
Blowjobs specifically, I've met Korean girls who were quite experienced, especially since they want to stay virgins, so they have to be experienced in doing something if they want to keep their guy
Although,
around.
having said that, I mean, I think, and we can talk about this more later, but I think that's shifted massively, and I don't think they're as concerned with that as they used to be.
No, yeah, it could be.
It really seems like the guys in Korea are having a far easier time than guys used to have. I mean, basically everybody's getting laid now, whereas before, 6-month dry spells were par for the course.
Yes. Well, I mean, it could just be, westernization or whatever reason that the times are changing.
Deciding that they're done with life being terrible.
Yeah, that could be. But
probably all the horrible marriages they've witnessed.
I can say that Japan has always been good. Like, I've never known a time in Japan where, having sex with a Japanese girl, you would just be like, oh no, why would you want to do that? Those girls are awful. Why would you? Yeah, I've never encountered that situation.
So my experience, I would say that there's basically been no difference. I haven't felt that Japanese girls were more skilled or Korean girls were more skilled, or I mean, I've been pretty happy with my blowjobs pretty much everywhere. That old joke. Did I ever tell you about the worst blowjob I ever got?
No.
It was awesome. So there you go. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think that in general. And I talk about this quite a lot. Oh, well, I don't talk about it specifically in relation to blowjobs, but in general in the sex seminar, I talk a lot about how to train your girls to blow you really well. And it's not just for blowjobs, it's for pretty much everything. And, I'll just let you in on the secret. It's positive reinforcement. If you positively reinforce even the attempts at doing what it is you really like, then people rise to the occasion. So, pretty much I think that it doesn't really matter where the girl is from, at least if she's Japanese, Korean, Hong Kong, Taiwanese. Oh, Thai girls.
No? Oh, you're asking me? Well, compared to...
My very limited experience is just weird hang-ups.
Thai girls are an interesting...
Train wreck?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're very interesting train
I think
wreck.
they need their own... that requires a whole other episode. Address Thai girls.
Okay, but anyway, so let's just stick with developed Asia. Girls from developed Asia, they seem to me to be pretty much all about, thinking of blowjobs as being a regular part of sexual life, and they know that guys like it, and if they like you, then they want you to like it, so they're going to try and deliver. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And I think that they're paying a lot of attention to how you do it. I mean, I have heard stories of girls. Okay, so now let's get into some of the problems you might run into with Korean girls. So, generally speaking, Japanese girls or Japanese people are much more receptive to feedback from other people.
Uh-huh.
Koreans are a lot less so. They're much more, I don't like to say strong-willed, but
stubborn?
Hard-headed, stubborn, something like that. Yeah. So, somewhere between stubborn and strong-willed. Some combination of those two traits. And because of that, they might have certain ideas about how a blowjob is supposed to be done. And if you don't like it, then they will think there's something wrong with you. Whereas a Japanese girl would just try and figure out how to do it, how you like it.
Oh, yeah, pretty much.
So, but once again, this does not mean that the Korean girl is less enthusiastic. She can be very enthusiastic,
mm-hmm.
but she may just not be very good at taking feedback. So I would say that that's kind of the difference when it comes to blowjobs. But let's expand the question and talk about Korean girls in the bedroom.
We should add a caveat here that even in countries like Korea and Japan, where you can find women who are quite similar to each other, you can still find very unique cases or unique experiences from girl to girl. Like, they're not gonna all be 100% the same.
Oh yeah, I mean, once I had this Japanese girl, I couldn't believe how it was probably the worst. No, it wasn't the worst sexual encounter. That was in Thailand. It was up there. And, it was my first time to be with a Japanese girl. Well, one, she wouldn't take off her top, which really bummed me out because, 80% of the reason I wanted to have sex with her was because she had this tattoo right on her titty. So I was all about seeing that. And then I didn't really get to see it. I mean, I could see it with but I didn't get to see it all. And then she really, really just laid there, which I think that's the only time I've really had that.
Yeah, you do get that much more frequently in Japan, I've noticed, than other countries. Well, in my experience anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
in Japan, this type of girl is called maguro, which means tuna.
Yeah, because they just lay there like a tuna.
Like a dead tuna.
Like a dead tuna.
Not one of those still flopping around ones. This came out of the sea. It's a dead one.
Yeah, I mean, but you have to keep in mind that a lot of times the Korean involvement is primarily a negative one.
Yeah.
So it's true that Koreans can be much more involved, but a lot of times they're much more involved in trying to prevent it from happening.
Yeah.
Even though they're going to do it for sure.
Yeah.
Or in making this positioning weird because they think that they're not comfortable or something strange.
Well, like the way Korean society is kind of set up, unfortunately, it's never really okay for the girl to have sex ever.
That's pretty true.
Yeah, so she even if she wants to have sex and she'll put herself in a situation where she knows sex is very likely to happen, she'll still resist to a certain extent because that's what's expected of her in that culture. If she doesn't put up some kind of effort to prevent the sex from happening, then she would be labeled a slut in her society, and that's no one really wants to affect their reputation in that way or be regarded negatively.
Right, absolutely. And on top of it, I mean, Koreans are supposed to be doing lots of things, and none of them involve enjoying their lives. And sex is something you do, unless you're married and trying to have kids, it's something that you do for fun. And the only thing Koreans are allowed to do for fun is drink. And the only reason they're allowed to do that is because they're really stressed. And they're really stressed because they spend all their time doing things that are supposed to advance their life. They're at work, they're, at school, they're doing both at the same time. They have classes for anything you can think of. I mean, if you want to be a flight attendant, there's a class for that. If you want to be an English teacher, there's a class for that. If you want to be, I can't, any profession. If you want to work at a hotel, there's a class for that. I mean, there's a class for everything. So a lot of the times, the girls, they all, I think Korea has like a 98% university graduation rate or something like that.
It's pretty up there.
So, almost basically everybody graduates from university, and then after that, they have to try and get a job, but everybody else also went to university, so it's really hard for them to get any of these jobs. And then, you're not qualified to work at a hotel because you went to university, so you got to go to school to learn how to be a hotelier or whatever it is. So they're always in these classes, they're always trying to get ahead, and that means enormous amounts of stress. And part of that, because people would say, well, America is very like that and people are very competitive and all that, but it's totally different. Because
in America, people are also encouraged to, exercise their individuality or try new things or, try to discover yourself.
Yeah.
Learn about your find out who you are, go out into the world. Whereas Koreans get none of that.
Yeah.
They're just like, no, we know exactly who you're supposed to be. If you're not that person, then you're basically bringing shame upon the family.
Yeah, so. Yeah, and this is an interesting, one of the interesting things about this is, we were talking about how important it is for Koreans not to come across as being slutty. But at the same time, many girls in Korea get boob jobs, not because they want them, but because their parents make them get them. They're like, you need to get a husband, a tit job will help you do that, let's get it done.
Well, that's very pragmatic.
It's very pragmatic. We get the tits done, get the nose worked up, narrow that chin.
Touch up your lips a little bit.
Right.
Oh yeah, of course get the double eyelid surgery.
The double eyelids, you
gotta
have
get that. I mean,
no
guy would want to look at you.
If you don't have double
filthy single eyelid.
So you see this is another example of how that competition bleeds over, but it's not that the girls are actually supposed to be actually having sex. I mean, that's of course not, right? And it's not even that they're going to even be showing off their breasts, because in Korea in general, you keep the top covered and you show the legs.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a very weird, I mean, as a Westerner, it's a very weird sort of combination of traits. But this contributes to sort of the way they are. But the other thing about Koreans is that Koreans, when they do things, even things they don't like to do, they kind of max them out.
Oh yeah, they go to the extreme of just like, well, I think one of the reasons they probably enjoy drinking so much is when they get fucked up enough, they just stop caring about, trying to live up to all these expectations or not being able to do what they want, and then they just do what they want.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally about stress release. I mean, they get, 8 to 10 hours of freedom. I mean, as much as they can remember of it.
And since drinking is so accepted within the culture, if you do anything while you're drunk, people are just like, oh, well, he's drunk, so I guess it's okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So, so a lot of people find Korean sexuality very frustrating to deal with because of a lot of these factors. They think that, the girls are too much trouble. And it is true that Korean girls are pretty demanding of guys, or they can be. When you don't know how to deal with them.
I've heard stories of girls complaining that a guy who would normally message her 200 times a day dropped down to 150 times that day, and she's like, he must be cheating on me or something, because I only got 150 messages today. Usually he sends me 200.
Now, to put these numbers in actual context, it's really more like 40 times a day. That's what they expect, something like that.
Yeah.
So, it's not really 150, 200, but it is a lot.
It's still kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. So, so Korean girls are pretty demanding because they will expect you to text them a lot, but because they're so busy, they're not actually that available to meet you.
That's why they want you texting them all the time, so they know that you don't have the time to be meeting other girls either, so she's in a safe position.
Let's just say that when you're dating in Korea, you take long bathroom breaks with your phone. So I guess that's quite enough. We were going to talk about AA, but we're already hitting up on almost an hour, so I think we'll just cut it now.
Okay.
Do you have any last minute words?
I'd say if I'm getting a blowjob from a Korean girl or a Japanese girl, I'm not going to be full of complaints.
That's true. I mean, if I have to flip a coin and, heads, I get head from a Japanese girl, tails, I get head from a Korean girl. I'm going to be flipping that coin as often as possible. All right. Okay, whereas if one of the choices was Thai, I'm not so sure. I might decide to go for a walk or something.
That requires some decision making.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode with a special guest, Mr. Wright.
Always happy to be here.
See ya.